an architecture media podcast, supported by the Australian Institute of Architects, produced on Boon Wurrung country.
Welcome to Design Speaks Weekly, a podcast that explores the biggest stories in Australian architecture and design. I'm your host, Georgia Burks, and today I'm joined by Rachel Nolan and Patrick Kennedy, founding partners of Melbourne architecture studio Kennedy Nolan. We talk about design trends and how architects can influence rather than follow them. But first, here's the latest news headlines from Architecture AU.
In the news this week, the Victorian Government has confirmed the completion of all 5 underground stations in the Metro Tunnel project. Opening dates for the completed Arden, Parkville, State Library, Town Hall and Anzac stations are yet to be announced. Elsewhere in Australia, Perth Airport has unveiled its $100 billion master plan, featuring a new domestic terminal, expanded international and regional terminals, and a 237-room hotel. The redevelopment will progress in stages, with operations expected to begin after the new terminal opens in 2031. And finally, the design for a new lyric theatre at Canberra's City Hill has been unveiled. Designed by Cox Architecture and several collaborators, the proposed lyric theatre is intended as the first stage in a broader redevelopment of the Canberra Theatre Centre. Those are the headlines for this week. For the full stories and more news, visit architectureau.com. I'm Adair Winder. It's Tuesday, October 7.
Rachel Nolan and Patrick Kennedy are founding partners of the award-winning practice Kennedy Nolan. Along with its many accolades and acknowledgements, the practice has amassed one of the largest Instagram followings of any Australian architecture studio, making it arguably one of the most influential in the country today. In today's episode, we learn about Rachel and Patrick's approach to staying ahead of the game, how they really feel about imitation, and the importance of being mindful of social media's impact. Hello, Rachel. Hello, Patrick. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Georgia. Hi.
Hey, Georgia. Thanks for having us along.
Rachel, you and Patrick established Kennedy Nolan together in 1999 and since then have made a huge mark on the Australian architecture and design scene with your wit, layered rationalism, colour, geometry and texture. From our perspective as editors, we would say that over the years, your designs have influenced trends rather than follow them. How do you think you managed to do this? And how do you feel about others attempting to mimic your approach?
Georgia Burks, that's a very flattering start for Patrick and I. We started in 99, like just before we kind of turned 30. So we were still kind of hanging on to our 20s. How do we do that? I don't know. It's nice to hear that you think we have. And I guess we don't think about doing that effectively. Although the very first project we did, like lots of young practices, was an alterations and additions to a house. And almost what we did was what we'd seen so much of. And trends is a funny word, isn't it? It's quite pejorative, I guess, for us, is what we were seeing was everywhere. And I sometimes think trends are what people think it's what they look like. But in this instance, it actually was spatial as well. In the late 90s, the house alteration addition was a big room on the back for all of the family to be in, that faced north, that had a relationship with a garden. And they were everywhere. Like it really was what we were seeing all the time. And when we did this first house, which was for Pat's cousin actually, which is another kind of typical start for young practices, family, absolutely used the idea that was so popular not to do it. So I guess there's been some kind of DNA in us when we see things done all the time, is how we don't do it and how we can try and investigate something new. So that first house, which is still a house we're still fiddling with today and had done a second iteration of, clearly Pat's cousin doesn't stop being his cousin, was an exploration of rooms and how it can be beautiful to be in rooms and how it can be beautiful to move around a house in seasons. It was a really early exploration of colour for us, and it was a really early exploration of garden, which seemed to be incredibly unfashionable for architects to speak about gardens at that time. So flattered to think that we do that. we effectively did try to do something new at that point when we were starting practice because we felt we had something to say. And very early in the piece, that little house, and we still laugh about how we even submitted it to the State Architecture Awards. It was pretty basic drawings and not professionally photographed, but it was acknowledged. And I think that gave us a real confidence, earning an industry award fresh out of the gates. So there was a real energy, I guess, in our practice to think for ourselves, try things. I mean, that's kind of why you start practice. You feel like you've got something to say.
How do you feel about others attempting to sort of mimic this approach of yours that you've crafted?
Oh, well, they say that flattery is the sincerest form of, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Look, I think we're pretty relaxed about it because it's not like we're not influenced by others either. So we're always looking at other architects and designers and things in the world and consciously or unconsciously referencing that or being interested in it. And so I feel like it's just part of creating stuff is that, it's very rarely just a first principles comes from nothing thing. It's always coming from somewhere else. So for us, it makes sense that people look at others and are influenced by that. And it's actually really lovely to know that what we've done is of sufficient quality that people would like to be influenced by it.
Yeah. Keeps us moving too, yeah? Like if we're doing the same thing or we're seeing more of the same thing, it keeps us really hungry to keep moving, even at this age.
Your early work is predominantly residential, and this continues to be an important typology for your practice. And this is the space where the influence of trends is perhaps the most palpable, and which it tends to be mostly about aesthetics. Patrick, when a client comes in with a collection of images that hints they are keen to follow a particular trend, how do you shift the conversation to inspire them about other possibilities?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on what they're showing us, because if they're showing us something which we find interesting in and of itself, even if it's on trend, we're happy to pursue that. I mean, I guess what we do try and do is not be influenced by trends and fashions ourselves on a first principles basis. Having said that, we are influenced by all these things. So if you're in the world and you're looking around, that the world at that time will be informing how your own creativity, and that's actually a really lovely thing, and it means that things look like when they're from. I think what's important for us with clients when they're showing us things is something that's relevant, that's appropriate, that's achievable, that works with every other part of the brief. So that's our interest, is actually making things which not forcing things. So the problem with trends, one of the biggest problems we see with trends is that they get forced into uncomfortable shapes. People want to do things which don't fit the size or the budget or the place, and that's where it falls down. But if it's a comfortable fit, well then we're kind of interested in it. We're not against trends. We just don't want to be slavishly following them. I mean, and a piece of advice that I heard a long time ago is not to look sideways. We try not to look sideways. And by saying that, I mean not looking at other practitioners doing the same things that we're doing. So in order to inspire our creativity, we're looking at things which engage our imagination. So that might be art, or it might be places, or it might be architecture from the past, or there might be cultural things. So I think they're the things we're kind of focused on, and that's how we can maintain newness and freshness in our work.
That's actually a great segue to my next question, which is for you, Rachel. Technology has propelled globalization, connecting us socially, economically, and culturally. And when it comes to design, this global interconnectedness and, of course, algorithms exposes us to similar things which I would say influence design outcomes that look the same. What do you do to break away from this sameness, which I think Patrick just slightly touched on? And what are the tools that you go to reset and refuel your creativity?
Maybe not looking at it, G. Like maybe actually not looking at the algorithm making things so much, or actually I quite like that too. But having a break from it, I think is I find personally incredibly rejuvenating. And having a break from any built environment, I find enormously helpful. So moving to landscapes that are rich in stories, moving to our own landscapes and rich in stories in our own country to learn too. Like I find that incredibly replenishing. It's like living in a house with a view. Yeah. Like there's less focus in and there's more focus out.
And you'll always see something different with that landscape every time you go back.
Yeah, I think so. Time of day, season, all of that stuff. Who you with? Yeah, like I'm not in landscapes alone. I'm often with others, and what you might talk in parallel without looking at each other, but looking at something that's bigger than you as well. Saying that, like it's kind of amazing that you can access so much imagery, even to put an image into Google now to find other things. Like what a resource. We sometimes think about what we had when we started in terms of even being able to source images. You'd have to have a book or you'd have a library of things. Like we're so spoilt in a way. We can be spoilt as in it ruins us, but we can be spoilt also in that we're rich for choice in it as well. So I feel really lucky to have that. And yeah, there is a fine line. And I actually think all those algorithms are kind of, we all know in the last year or 2 years, like they've picked up a type of speed that's pretty mad and probably a good thing to get a position on, as opposed to before where there was a great, if we're talking about Instagram or we're talking about online, a great sense of community. Like you need to do a bit of tidying up and decision making about how you use it, as opposed to letting it kind of overwhelm you. So I think we have to start thinking about it more, how we eat that stuff.
I'm sort of interested in, I'm not a massive algorithm follower, but I am really interested in what's happening in the world at the same time. And there's some observations I've had about this. So frequently, Rachel and I will come to the same conclusion about design independently of each other. I think this is kind of uncanny and kind of interesting. And then you see it in the world of fashion too, where fashion designers will all sort of alight on a particular thing at the same time independently. It happens with colours. People come to colours separately. And I think there's something about the theory of the zeitgeist that actually things get captured. And I feel like that the sensitivity to that is actually a really positive thing. The problem with it is when it becomes a slavish following of it. That's really boring. But if you're sort of channeling something that's in the air, that's sort of interesting because it's actually talking about the time and place you're in. And I guess algorithms, the negative thing about algorithms is that they kind of distort that because they don't let it run, they don't let it flow naturally. They sort of pinpoint everything down to conclusions. And they're all about what's happened before, not about what's happening next. So I think I agree with Rachel. They're a useful tool used consciously.
Yeah, but I think that there also does appear to be these days a desperation to use the thing you've seen and you've loved, and like, how do I get it in there? And like you were talking about earlier, is it has to fit, has to be right, and there's a whole lot of I guess kind of creative DNA that helps you make the right choice of that. But you can see it. You can see things that just someone's been determined to use, and whether it's the right fit or not, there's a lack of judgment.
I mean, I think this is the problem with the digital age, is that everything has been reduced to images. So it's all about imagery. And even architecture's reduced to imagery now. It's all about architectural photography more than the architecture itself. So this problem with images actually takes away the fact that what is really important about architecture is how it makes you feel and how it is over the course of a day or a week or a season. And they're the things that images don't do. They're really static and composed. And so it's just getting into balance an image which, might be an amazing, chair or light or architectural detail, balancing that with like, how is it useful? How is it appropriate? How is it comfortable? How does it scale? Or, all of those actual physical characteristics of things, which are nothing, which the way they look is only one very small part of it.
Yeah. And that's the redirection with a client, with an image, is a very easy deflection or redirection to, let's talk about how you should feel in that space or what you want from it, in terms of serving your needs, as opposed to how it should look. That's quite easy to move to, I think, in terms of a redirection.
The space is about how you feel in it and how others feel in it, rather than how it looks to others.
Yeah, and I think people are really up to talk about their feelings, weirdly, in design. I think they're quite surprised when the conversations come up. But it's it's quite an expansive way to talk to people and get to know them as well, not just like, this will be this colour, this will be this material, this is the kind of configuration, but, like in homes, in your house, how you feel is a pretty big deal. And usually people don't shy away from that conversation. I think it's quite an interesting thing to open up. And it's like really asking someone about themselves. People love to talk about themselves.
Patrick, as we record this episode, Kennedy Nolan has just over 98,000 followers on Instagram. This means your studio's Instagram profile has one of, if not the largest number of followers for an Australian architecture studio. With a huge number of eyes looking to your work, do you feel pressure to be leaders when it comes to bigger design or world issues? Do you feel a responsibility to be influential for the greater good?
That's a really great question, Georgia. I think we do feel a responsibility as a practice of 25 plus years to be useful. And this is what we talked about at our NGV keynote earlier this year. How can we be useful? So what we're not interested in is sort of using Instagram to brag or to make people feel envious or to show off lots and lots of glossy pictures. We're actually more interested in saying, this is who we are, these are our values, these are the things we're interested in, these are some of the things we're doing. I'm not that involved with it. Rachel is way more involved with our Instagram feed, and she's such a great communicator.
And you are, Rachel.
And that sort of generosity and that warmth, I think, comes through, and I think that's what actually people are attracted to, because they don't feel like there's no sort of sense of look at us, envy us, don't you want to be us? It's way more generous than that, and I think that's actually what makes it popular. And I feel like that comes with a responsibility, that everything we use it for is responsible. We're also stepping back from using it for advocacy, because the online echo chambers are quite aggressive and nasty, and people behave really badly. So we're not really interested in wading into that murky pond. We do want to make it a positive thing. So you'll probably see that we change the way we use it slightly.
Oh, we've also got amazing people in leadership roles here with, incredible kind of morals and social advocacy way beyond us. It's a culture in here that has not just been brought by Pat and I. So that sense of our practice being not just these faces, yeah, but being many, I think is a medium which architecture has now informally, let's call it, Instagram informally, that can show the breadth or range of what's happening in your practice in real time, where a website's a bit more uptight than that, or your outside comms might be a bit more kind of set than that. But, there's lots of us, yeah, and there's lots of us to keep each other to account, push each other or challenge each other or direct the practice. We argue, we say what's right to do, and I would hope that as a medium, we're able to keep that in there. When it started, it was such a sweet little platform. It was a sweet platform to meet new people within architecture. It was actually a beautiful tool. And I think what you're talking about now in terms of that online echo chamber, it's got a bit of a knife edge that can happen in there now. So we're just going to keep an eye on it. You know, these things never stay the same. And they get bigger and they become a more kind of powerful money-making platform. They don't give you what you used to love about it necessarily. But, you know, we'll try and drive it our own way. We'll try and, you know, it's a nice innovative little tool. You can have a bit of fun with it. But, I mean, we kind of almost personally use it not for architecture too. It's like the things I like to do, I can go find it, make it different communities outside of architecture on it. So it can still be a sweetie, but it's also got some shitty things about it, I think.
Yep. I completely understand what you're coming from with that. Look, Patrick and Rachel, to end our episode, at this moment in time, what is inspiring you?
I am inspired, and probably a bit of a segue off what we've just been speaking about, is brave people. You know, sometimes I think we're pretty good at when we see people being brave, we can recognise it and then go, okay, we've got this whole kind of artillery here. We've got 25 of us. We've got practice profile. We've got a reputation. How do we jump behind the brave people? Because sometimes, you know, we're busy. We don't have the energy to do it ourselves. So with Nightingale, with New Normal, with all sorts of other things that are happening now, is how can we recognise and be inspired by those brave people and help them out? So that's my answer.
Great answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was thinking along the same lines, more about other people in the community. Because I was reading about Bob Brown on the weekend, and I was just people like him who have just dedicated their lives to really critical causes for humanity. I feel like so much sacrifice in that, and so much humility, and so much buy-in. I mean, in every way that they live their lives. I'm sort of inspired by that. I think it's a lesson for me personally about what my priority should be as a human being. So,
love that, Patrick. I think my takeaway from today is just continue to look beyond your realm and connect with others. I think they're beautiful messages. So, Rachel and Patrick, it's always a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thanks, thank you, Georgia. It's always absolutely our pleasure to talk to you, girl.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode, which is supported by the Australian Institute of Architects. If you're enjoying this podcast, be sure to subscribe, share, or leave a rating. I'm Georgia Burks, and this has been Design Speaks Weekly. Design Speaks Weekly is produced on Boonwurrung country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture.